All right. Well, okay, I'm going to kick us off here and say again, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us here today. We are beyond thrilled to have Stephanie Goetz share her topic of communicating with impact, just a topic we all need right now, especially in this time of crisis. So for those of you that, before we kick it off, actually, I'm going to just share a little bit about our format. Today Stephanie's going to talk a little bit, and when she does, you can feel free to change your view from gallery view to speaker view. That way you can see as the PowerPoint is up, you can move the images around and get her full frame on the screen. And there's just things that you can do with your format. So we invite you to explore that so you get the view that you want. However, it's going to be recorded differently. It's recording on my screen. So when you see the recording, it will look different than how you viewed it. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you, and also to let you know that we invite you to use the chat box and Q&A to ask any questions during the webinar, and to remind you that this will be recorded, and we'll email you an email after the event today, and you'll have the link so that you can view the webinar afterwards. But it will also be found on our website, which is teamwomenmn.org/events. So that's a little bit about our format. And Stephanie, as she talks, she'll be inviting questions from all of you so you can participate during her talk. So first of all, for those of you, since we have so many people here gathered today in honor of Stephanie, I want to share a little bit about our organization and our work. So first, our mission is we inspire women to rise together. We're a member-based organization. We have about 650 members, and they come from all different industries, from financial services, legal, education, government, military, nonprofit. And they serve in a variety of roles. From about 40% are that director level on up to the C-suite, 30% are managers and collaborators, and about 30% are entrepreneurs and consultants. We always have people in transition, and if you are, we're excited that you're here and part of our community, because our goal is to help all of you get to where you want to go. We do that through our 3 pillars. We have opportunities for you to connect, grow, be inspired, and make a difference. One of our key pillars is our mentor program. If you have ever considered being a mentor, we invite you and encourage you to participate in our mentor program that we're launching in June. And the application deadline is May 6th. Right now we're full for mentees. So we invite you to join as a mentee, but you'd be placed in our fall program. But for a mentor, the rewards are innumerable. We have seen it's a 12-month mentee-driven program, and you meet with your mentor once a month, and our mentors have seen their mentees rise to the C-suite. They've seen mentees join corporate boards, change lanes mid-career, and re-enter the workforce. So it's true, they say you always get more than you give. So if you're looking for an opportunity to give back in your life and help somebody on their journey, this could be a great option for you. We also have several leadership development experiences, we call them, throughout the year. We have 3 flagship events. Our leadership conference is August 7th. Our Wavemaker Awards is October 22nd. That's planned by our Young Professionals Advisory Board. And that shines a light on our up and coming leaders. I know, Stephanie, we're going to see a lot of leaders coming out of this COVID crisis, I'm sure. So it'll be fun to recognize them. And then our Empower Rising Stars Gala is a nonprofit fundraiser that supports our work with youth leaders. So our virtual platform has taken off thanks to COVID-19. We were able to just pivot and go virtual. We have some awesome events coming up, and so grateful for the speakers that have participated. Again, thank you so much, Stephanie. On Friday, we'll have Rachel Brewster talking about the Memory Palace. Remember with ease and make public speaking a breeze. I love that title. That's fun. So, and then our authors and apps is going for virtual. We've got Nancy Dahl, who will be talking about her book, Grounded, Leading with Your Life with Intention. And then Jamie Tates is going to be talking to us about developing your leadership superpowers. That's a roundtable held May 19th. So in our youth leadership, we provide online coaching sessions for youth 6th through 8th grade and also 9th through 12th. And it's been so rewarding to be able to help kids on this journey too, especially now when we're all remote and isolated and away from our friends and trying to learn things. Everybody's learning new technology, adults too, all of us on Zoom. So our coaches provide just a great tools and skills to help them navigate this time. In fact, that series has been so popular, we created a certification program because here in Minnesota, our schools now will not be returning. So the kids won't be returning. So we created a program to help parents, educators, coaches, keep kids engaged in learning and developing themselves by having a certification program. Kids can be certified in resilience, confidence, mental wellness, and leadership. So please check out our website for all of this information. Thank you for letting me share. I appreciate you indulging me that opportunity to give you a little broad brush stroke on TeamWomen and what our organization is. We wouldn't be able to do the work that we do without our valuable sponsors. And are not only our annual sponsors, but our leadership conference sponsors. For that, now that is done, I am happy to introduce to you our speaker, the reason that you're all here today. So thanks again, Stephanie. And I'm gonna read this just because I don't wanna miss a thing. So Stephanie Goetz is an award-winning news anchor, business owner, executive speaker coach, pilot, she's a pilot, a philanthropist, and professional trainer. This Emmy-nominated broadcaster anchored and reported more than 5,000 newscasts at NBC, CBS, and ABC affiliates over 10 years. She's the founder and owner of Goetz Communications, where she works with C-suite leaders, top executives, and all walks of life to develop their communication skills, media training, brand influence, and speaker effectiveness, and preparing them for engagements with any size of audience and for high stakes communication. She has many speaking engagements under her belt, including TEDx. Stephanie brings her firsthand experience with presentation to the job to help clients build their individual presence, personalize their core message, strengthen delivery, and manage difficult situations during media engagements. Stephanie also helps clients with internal and external company communications. Her client list includes Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft, Nike, T-Mobile, Cessna Aircraft, Thomson Reuters, Northwestern Mutual, MasterCard, and more. Please help me in giving Stephanie a warm virtual welcome today to our webinar. Thanks so much again, Stephanie. And you can see the chat has just been crazy.
Oh, hands clapping. Thank you. I love it. All right. All right. Virtual clapping. Well, thank you so much, Katie. Thank you so much for having me here today. I will say I'm particularly honored to be here, not only from being a member of TeamWomen for many years, but I really admire and have been a fangirl of the work that TeamWomen does for many years, because it's not just your typical professional organization. It is women are empowering each other. You're giving great resources that are actually tangible and practical. But the women that I get to interact with, especially when we're in person, they're different, they're unique, they're powerhouses, they're strong, but they really come alongside each other. So I feel like this is such a great organization to be a part of, and thank you for all the resources and the pivot that you've done in this time. It's invaluable. So I appreciate that so much. Well, we're here today to talk about all things communication, but as we step into that, I want to start with a sentiment that actually one of the other speakers started with before, that in this time of incredible challenge, fear for many, uncertainty, unknown, I want us to step back and remember this, that I hope that you can be granted the serenity to accept the things that you can't change, the courage to change the things that you can, and then the wisdom to know the difference. Whatever your faith or whatever your background, this rings so true right now. When I saw this, and I've known this serenity prayer for years, it's easy to forget how much control we actually do have in our small but very important and sometimes very big part of the universe. especially when it comes to how we impact and how we communicate and how we relay information. We have full control over that. And we also have the ability to have the courage to maybe speak up and say something that we need to, or the courage to hold our tongue when sometimes it's needed to, and essentially the wisdom to know the difference. But ultimately, people will sometimes forget all of what you say. They might forget even what you did, but truly, I believe in this quote from Maya Angelou: people will never forget how you made them feel. And so when you go into your talks or one-on-ones or one-on-many, thinking about how is this being perceived? How will I make the other person across from me feel, or the many people? And how can I connect with them? Will make a bigger impact than you'll ever realize, even in just your words. And we're going to talk about all of that today. When we go through this today, I want you to chat. I want you to ask questions. Pop them in there when you can. We're going to make this as interactive as possible, and we'll take questions throughout. And even at the end, I might stay a little bit longer. Who knows? That's the plan, to be able to, answer any of your questions you have, especially during this time of how do I communicate well? So the best thing that you can do when you think about the communications that you need to have with someone else is you have to start with the other person. We often think about our own message, but that's going to do no good if you don't know the person you're talking to, know your audience, and know how they receive things. And then put yourself in their shoes. If you were in their shoes right now, how would you want to be spoken to? Especially in this time of crisis, if you're talking to employees and you're leading a team, put yourself back in those shoes when you were an employee, not knowing all the intricacies and knowing so much about the organization and everything that's going on. So if you then put yourselves in the shoes of your employees and they're concerned about layoffs, changes, pay cuts, then you need to explain that, and you need to do that as effectively as you can. It starts with what you say, your message, then how you say it, your clarity, how concise you are, the color and life you bring into your message. It also is your voice, your tone of voice, your pace, how fast you go, or how slow you go, and how you can have some pauses and reflect. And ultimately, then you wrap it in a big bow with your presence, how you come across. It's the last on this list, but in fact, it's actually the first and the most important thing that people see, judge, or assess as to whether they can trust you, or whether they like you or don't like you, or whether they believe in your message. So why is all of this important in what you say, and how you come across? There's some very interesting statistics out there that show that about companies are losing billions of dollars every single year on lost productivity because of miscommunication. So, I mean, think about that with your boss, your colleague, or your significant other, or your family. When you're talking here and they think you're here, or vice versa, or around, and you're not connecting, unfortunately, that's when a lot of productivity gets lost, or just productivity in increasing your conversation and moving the message forward. And so when you can focus on really honing this skill, an immense amount can be gained and developed. And actually, they've even shown that leaders who have a better communication and stronger communication and more clear and concise, they've increased revenue by something plus 40+% overall, because they've increased productivity, they've increased inspiration, they've increased drive with their teams. It's pretty powerful. And so when we think about what we say, you have to know your audience. Are they your children? Is it your spouse? Is it the people around you you're trying to maybe get the house cleaner or get everyone a little bit nicer to each other? Maybe. Is it your colleagues? Is it your employees? Or is it your boss? Knowing your audience and a little bit about them is going to be really helpful. But not only that, go one step deeper. Do they need to assess things and take it in? Are they more extroverted? Are they more introverted? Do they need to have all the data and facts? Or is it okay that it's a little bit more open-ended? When you know your audience and you know how they'll respond to things, then you can get your message more effective by being transparent, by communicating frequently, and by communicating with empathy and strength, and also then providing solutions. Now, we're going to focus a little bit more on the current situation because it is so prevalent, and what do you do right now? So when you think about how can you be transparent, you as a boss, you as a leader, you know a lot. You almost know too much. When you put yourself in their shoes and think, what do they need to know about what's going on, the more effective you can be. For example, an employee is probably wondering, will there be layoffs? Will there be cuts? Will there be a reduction in pay? maybe you can say that right now we are not going to be focusing at all on layoffs. That's the last thing that we want to be doing, but we are in this together, and we all have to make sacrifices together. So that's maybe the message. And the message may be, all right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to have voluntary furloughs or voluntary different pay cuts here or there. We might have 401k match is going to be gone for this next year. But when you also frame it in the message that you're doing this as a whole and together, it does become more powerful. And there's a sense of that we're doing this not just for one or two people, which I think a lot of people understand, but communicating the why you're doing it, not just here's how we're doing it. Because if you're even doing that to your kids or your significant other, and you just say, here, do this, would you want to be spoken to that way? When you then think about the transparency of it, but then communicating frequently, that's going to be paramount right now. I know a lot of you out there are seeing this, and you're probably seeing a ton of communications, maybe sometimes too much, from your boss or from maybe the shops or the businesses or the places you work out. And it might feel like a barrage, but it's actually really important, because right now the importance is letting people know what's going on. So if you're a gym that has hours that are reduced, say that. Can you say anything about next steps going forward? If you are having longer call center call times and longer wait times, say that on your website, send an email, put that on a message. I've also talked to some, mom and pop shops that say we literally have an answering machine and one phone service. You can record a message every single day that's new. Here's an update. Here's what's going on. We'll get to your calls as quickly as we can. And the third piece that rounds that out is it's got to be with empathy, but also strength and providing some solutions. So the start should be something around the line of, we know that you're probably facing a lot of uncertainty right now. We know what you're going through, but what we're doing is X, Y, and Z. When any leader in any crisis situation or any situation just in general speaks about from both a place of, I understand what you're going through, but here's what we're going to do about that together, and here's the path forward. People feel heard, they feel understood, but they also feel like they're in good hands with the person taking them forward. And then you have to provide some solutions as much as you can. Right now, especially more than ever, people want to know what is going to happen next. How are we doing? What's going on? It can be even just a littlest solution of that. You're going to provide an update every day so they know what's going on, or something as big as we're actually going to be adding staff because we're hiring right now because you might be an essential business. So I know there's been a lot of chats coming up and some people raising their hand. I'm curious, Katie, what do we have? Are there some people with some comments or questions so far?
Yeah, Amy Countryman has a question.
Okay.
So, Amy, let's see if we can see what your question is. She raised her hand. Maybe you can send it in the chat, Amy. That'd be great. But we're just getting a lot of
awesome.
Yeah, a lot of comments right here. And that was an accident. Sorry.
Okay, so as we keep going, then a big piece about our communication is exactly what I was just requesting, was your questions, is just that. So it's not only what you say, now it is how you say it. So how do we come across? If you're thinking about the message you want to get across to anyone that you want to get the message across to, the first thing you should think about is your audience. And secondly, then what is your desired outcome? So how are you going to be able to get the message across? But what is the thing that you want? Are you asking for a raise? Are you asking for support? Are you asking for a little more information? Are you asking for someone to just clean and help be a part of this family right now because it's so challenging and we're in such close quarters? When you think about what is your desired outcome, then you can also say, where can I meet in the middle with them? And where can this individual, what do they need? What do they want? Where can I maybe meet them on some of that? And you might say, well, I don't know what that is. Good. I don't want you to assume. I want you to instead inquire. Our communication is about communication, but we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. To listen more than we speak when possible. And so if you really need to get intel about what's going on, or about maybe an employee who's always showing up late to work, instead of just saying, hey, why are you late all the time? Could you maybe ask a question to say, I'm kind of seeing a pattern here that you've been late to a lot of meetings, or you haven't been showing up as much. Tell me what's going on now? What's going on in your life right now? When you dig a little deeper and when you have that respectfully and build that trust, then they're going to open up a little bit more, little by little by little. When we listen to understand, not just reply, there's huge, huge power in that, to be able to understand a little bit more of what they're experiencing, what they're going through, and then to reply. And then, of course, we have to speak. And I work with some very top executives at some of the top businesses in the world, as well as frontline staff and interns at small mom and pop shops. And always they say, how do I get a clear message and concise message? And just how do I get my message across? It's all the pieces we talked about. And then it's thinking about, okay, what's the headline of that desired outcome? So you have a meeting where you have to make sure that you're talking about a new initiative or a new product you're launching. So what's the headline? Is it that we need to get X amount of products out in X amount of time? Is it that we need to make sure we activate these many people? Whatever that headline is should be, as much as possible, brought to the top of the meeting so people know what's going on. But there are going to be bullet points underneath that and sub-headlines like there would be in a news story. But the more you can think about what's my headline, what's the most important, everything should ladder back up to that. So then when you get back to the bottom of the meeting and you've gone every which way and it's gone way off course, you can bring it back to say, okay, so what we were here to talk about was this, what we accomplished was this, and here's where we're going from here. Where I see a mistake too, and a place that people had more of an opportunity to be strong and to be really engaging, is when people don't use declarative language. A lot of times people will say, well, I kind of sort of might be launching an initiative. No, you're either launching an initiative or you're not. Or you usually are or you aren't. There's not a whole lot of times where you're kind of or sort of. We put those words in more as fillers and as something we put in because we don't know what to say next. If you don't know what to say, stop talking. Find the period and allow some silence. Because it's okay. Now people might jump in and you might get off track, but you can easily get back on track by remembering what was that main point that I wanted to come back to. More importantly than ever though, is to making sure that you get that declarative language in there. And then lastly, your voice and your tone of voice. This is so important. There are so many facets to our communication. It's our message, it's that the voice, and then of course the body language. And it's kind of like an evolutionary thing. We're assessing all different aspects as to whether we can trust someone's message or not. When those are off, that's when trust erodes a little bit, or we kind of go, something's off. So let's say that I said, let's say I said it like this, and I said, it's so nice to see you. Versus, it's so nice to see you. Which one do you think is more accurate there, Katie?
The second one. Yeah. Or I'd prefer it, put it that way.
Exactly. Well, the first one might be accurate, that they're not excited to see you.
Right.
And the second one certainly is showing that more engagement and is showing that congruency. And same way, so that goes to our tone of voice and our body language. Like if you say, why are you always so late? Okay, first of all, how would you receive that from your boss or your manager if they said that to you? Your walls would probably go up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But if they said, again, how are you doing? We're noticing that you're being, you're tardy quite a bit, and that's not like you. Well, tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
And sometimes people will say in classes that I coach, they'll say, I feel like that's being weak, or that's not being strong enough. It's not. It's coming from a place of security that's showing I care about you because I care about the people around me that I work with. And here's how I want to make this place better. So I'm going to inquire and ask a few questions.
That's great. We do have some great questions.
Yeah.
Can I ask a few of them?
Of course.
Somebody through the Q&A said, what advice would you have for upward communication and feedback if these are not followed by our managers' leadership, especially now when it's so challenging when managers don't lead in this way? So if you can get a little bit of intel about, why do they react this certain way that they are, what's their tendencies, again, things like, do they retaliate a little bit or recoil when people, do they get defensive? Do they jump back? Do they lash out? Or are they more thoughtful? Do they sit back? Those kinds of questions. To sit back and go, then how are they going to respond? It might just be that they're sitting back and that they're just listening and taking it all in, because that's how they do it versus responding. But I would say even diving a little bit deeper into the inquiry, you can ask them a little bit more about in times that it's appropriate,
maybe ask them about, tell me a little bit more about your, you know, your management style, and tell me about your experience and some experiences you've had. It's off topic, but what that does is give you a sense of who they are and a sense of how they respond to situations. You could ask them about, yeah, tell me a situation where you experienced this. I'm just so curious. And when we come from this place of curiosity, even if it's a very challenging individual, it gives us a sense of who they are. An experience that I recently went through with a client that I was working with, they said that their boss was just on them all of the time and just like super harsh on them and nobody else. And they didn't understand why. And I couldn't really, you know, pinpoint necessarily why this person was getting singled out.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Oh, I'm back. Okay, good.
Yes. Okay.
So this person felt singled out by their boss. Boss was being more harsh. Boss was coming down on them more. And I didn't necessarily know why that was the case, but I said, tell me a little bit about this person's background. Well, they were a first-time manager in that position. That was a very high-level position. There's probably a little bit of having to prove themselves, and they have massive, massive expectations on their shoulders as a new leader. And so some of that could have just been coming out because their own leader was afraid. Their own leader was having all these things pressed on them. But I encouraged her. I said, you can have this conversation with your boss and say, I want to step back a little bit. I feel like there's a little more expectation or a little more question on me. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're expecting of me? Or if there's a little more, if there's something else going on here, I think you can be as transparent and honest as possible, but it's got to be in a kind, respectful way, because it's not going to help anyone. Now, remember this too. It's not just one conversation. It's not just two. It might be 3, 4, or 5. And so giving yourself that grace of maybe 5 conversations that need to have. So if you do have it in the first one and you get that point across or you get that resolve, fantastic.
Those are awesome. And you kind of answered some of these questions too that are filtering in. Isabel is asking us, what's the best way to approach a manager about their ineffective communication style while we're all remote? So it sounds like we might flip that, you know, the feeling of the manager being ineffective, and somehow flip it to kind of going back to asking questions about them.
Yeah. This one's a tough one because all of us have so much on our minds and our plates and our shoulders right now that it's all of these sometimes challenging or negative ways that we come across are being exasperated because we have so much stress on us. So it depends on the relationship you have with your manager. I know my previous managers, I could certainly send an email and say, hey, I have a little bit of feedback just from a few of colleagues that I'm talking to here. Do you mind if I talk with you about it? Just so we can, I think it will help us all get on board and be able to follow and understand what's going on better and be more effective. I mean, think about what your leader wants. Again, who's your audience? What do they want? They want teams to be productive. They want teams to be working like very well together. Well, then say, this is a way that we can do that. And when you communicate that, do that upfront and honest, but it can be with kindness. It can be that, okay, well, what we're kind of experiencing is that it's a new challenge, a new era for all of us. But the more clear and concise you can be, and maybe just focus on one point, John, is that's going to be more effective for us. And maybe there's a way that you can X, Y, and Z. What do you think? So I mean, it's having this open dialogue with them and not being afraid. You actually might be surprised if it's a leader who's decent or at the very minimum decent. And then if they are great, they actually want this feedback. They know that this is the only way for them to then be more effective for their leaders and for the whole company. So the feedback is okay, but come at it from a perspective of not defensiveness, and use declarative language as much as you can instead of, we kind of sort of might maybe feel this way. Is that okay? Just say, this is how we're feeling. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Is there a way that we could maybe blank? And
that's like what Terry is saying too. She loves the reminder just to focus on the headline, right?
Yes.
You're saying declarative language and also the headline. That's how we can just focus on the one thing we want to get accomplished in this conversation that might be challenging or scary, to be honest.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then, and Susan also says that she is going to delete the word just from her communication.
Yes. I know that's a hard one because I do use it still a little bit every once in a while because I just, I'm just wondering this, but right. But it's, I was recently working with, I'm working with a company on developing a virtual platform with training for them. And one of the things that they say, please relay this message is that, that people say phrases that are kind of unique to them. They'll say, now look, or right, or what I would say is, or just, or whatever it is. If there are phrases that are go-to phrases for you, scrap them. What that is it's lazy speak, or it's that you're just not even thinking about it and you're letting something just roll off your tongue. When you're more thoughtful about your communication, how you're coming across, then you're able to be more creative in that. So if you say all the time, like when someone asks you something, that's a good question. That's fine. Some people cannot stand that phrase because people think it's disingenuous. I go either way on it, but maybe you could get more creative to say, I never thought about it like that. I think, and then whatever you say from there. So being more creative in how you respond. And so, okay, we'll continue getting to your questions. What I really want to get back to now here, thank you everyone. This is amazing, right? Mm-hmm. What I want to get to now is not only how you say it, but then it is how you come across. So presence, what is it? Everyone wants to be able to have better presence, executive presence, strong presence, but what is it? It's kind of that charisma. It's how you light up a room. It's that person that walks into a room and you're like, oh my gosh, you can just see their energy and a little bit of that aura. And presence is interesting because it's not something that literally means that you have to be taller or bigger to really command presence. Think about that 5'0" guy or gal that just is a spitfire that just lights up that room. Presence is much more about just your stature, but it is about how you make people feel. It's how you connect, and it's how you have composure. So why is it important? Well, presence is the thing that we see first and foremost in people. When you first came into this webinar, you saw and assessed both Katie and I. You saw our clothes, you saw our facial expressions, you saw how we were sitting, you saw we kind of just make this overall assessment. Some it's a judgment, some it's an assessment. But we do that because we're just naturally assessing the environment around us. We're looking at what are our threats, what are the people that we trust, what things do we like, what's interesting, what's unique. And so as a leader, why is it so important? Because it is the first thing that people see, and it's often the only thing, other than sometimes hearing from you. If you're a leader of a large organization or leading a team of even 10 or 20 people, how many times are you speaking directly to them? Right now, it's probably more than ever, but on a regular basis, you're not getting in front of them as much as you could. Just like think about the CEO of your large company. How often do you speak to her or him? Probably not very often, unless you are in the leadership team. And so what you have to go off of is how they come across and their presence. There was a survey done by Gartner, which was a great survey, looked at how employees perceive their leaders and how they based and judged them and found them competent. And in the survey, the number one most important thing for a CIO, a chief information officer, or any C-suite was business acumen. But number two was presence. That was the second most important thing for their leader to have, which was so surprising. You'd think it would be about hitting sales goals, market share, strategy. It actually wasn't. The third and fourth and fifth were more of those business related pieces, but employees said presence was really important. Technology skills ranked 12th. And I believe this through and through, and it's not just because I coach it, it's because I see it. When I work with some leaders, I'll see from a mile away someone who is, when their superior comes to me and says this person needs to work on something, and then when I see someone who doesn't need any sort of work on their presence and are elevated in the company even more, I go, that does play a big role because people see, believe, lead, and are inspired, follow, and are inspired by that person. The other person, they're unsure of, does this person truly have my best interest in mind? Do they know what they're talking about? Will I be able to approach them? So the question then as a leader is it better to be loved or feared? I'm sure many of you have thoughts on that. Interestingly, the research and overarching answer to this really is actually both. When you have warmth and you have strength together, that is the powerhouse duo for some of the most effective leadership that you can find. Now, think that if you just have warmth as a leader and it's just that would be great. They'd be understanding. They'd be empathetic. They might give you the time off when you need it. But would they be able to make the tough decisions or make strategy decisions and execute on them? Maybe, maybe not. Now, if you just have strength, they would certainly be able to make those tough decisions in business and withstand the storms. They'd be able to stand up for you. But they could be a little bit challenging, maybe a little bit micromanaging. Too strong of a boss and too intense of a boss, I don't even need to say more than that. I know we've all had one. So certainly, if you have these individually, it doesn't always work. Now, when you have them together, that is the combination that wins. Research has also shown more than ever, to build influence, you have to build trust. And to build trust, you actually lead with or start with warmth. Now, this is something that kind of is jaw-dropping for some people because they say, warmth, I feel like my competency has to come first. I feel like my business acumen and what I'm doing, what I'm talking about has to come first. That's vitally important, but if it doesn't come with any sort of relatability or thinking about the other person or the audience, it can fall a little bit flat. And by warmth, I mean something as simple as if you're going into a like multi-million-dollar or $100 negotiation, you could still come in with a smile and a cordialness and a wave, because now we'll be 6 feet apart or virtually. But you can come with a warmth and a relatability, and also okay, we're going to get this done together, and we have to both compromise a little bit. I understand that. But you will have a fierce strength about you as well. There are some conversations that need to have 90% strength, 10% warmth, 10% strength, 90% warmth, and used interchangeably. And when I talk with people, they also say, well, like, how do I amp that up a little bit? How do I increase that side of me? First of all, I would say be conscious and aware of, are you always on the tend more to that warm side, or are you all more towards the strength side, or are you kind of in between somewhere? But see where you can be stronger. See where you can maybe put your foot down more where you need to. See where you're able to stand up for someone or stand up for the situation a little bit more, even if it feels uncomfortable. And little by little, that will build. Or I was working with a female recently who was such a badass. She was so awesome. And she was this, she had her MBA. She was running a division at a telecom company. And she was all business all the time. And I was like, that's great. But like, no one really likes working for you because you're just business all of the time. Can you maybe ask your employees how their weekend went? Can you chat with them a little bit? Can you be that person that I see when you're out for cocktails a little bit more appropriately, of course? And the more that she was like that, the more that brought people in, and that connectivity, that they actually opened up to her significantly, a great deal more. And so what does this look like in leaders? Richard Branson does this incredibly well. I mean, he never wears a tie because he thinks it stifles creativity. He also gives back a lot of his earnings to his employees and hires within. And a multi-billion-dollar business of Virgin Group, Virgin Mobile, Virgin Galactic, Virgin everything. You think he's withstood a few storms in business? Yes, he's embodied warmth and strength. Sheryl Sandberg does this incredibly well too. She can be a polarizing figure at times with everything that's gone on at Facebook, but what you can't deny is that she has done an incredibly good job at bringing this empathy into work now after losing her husband. She's on a kind of crusade of empathy and understanding to be able to build and lift people up in a strong way. Satya Nadella, if you want to read a book, I would read the book Hit Refresh. Incredible man. He's the third and current CEO of Microsoft, an incredible man who has really showed that with empathy and understanding, that can actually drive sales and drive much more business even than anything. And he wrote the book Hit Refresh about his current time at Microsoft. Christine Lagarde, she was the managing director at the International Monetary Fund. She's also now the president of the European Central Bank. This woman, emulate how the way that she comes across when she speaks. It is so fierce, but it brings in wit, humor, and also levity in there. And then lastly, politics aside, Michelle Obama really embodies having this warmth, this fierceness about her that is like nothing else. So how do you truly have great presence and influence? It starts with composure. Are you cool, calm, and collected under pressure? How you can do that is be a little bit more relaxed, sit back, take a breath, and not be relaxed in the sense necessarily where you're just sitting back, but more settle yourself down a little bit, especially in a challenging conversation or a presentation. Slow your heart rate, pause, breathe. Great leaders that have great composure have great presence. They also have confidence, strong body language, but eye contact, great authenticity, and feeling comfortable in your skin. Clear communication is key. And this, I do seminars that are days long on all of this. And so it's hard to fit this all in at once, but when you have that clear communication, that's clear, concise, and powerful and impactful, that's where your messages really win and where you can have this connection, which is the fourth one. Connection is so important because if we don't connect with our audience or connect with the people that we're speaking to, it's lost. So how do you connect with an audience that's of 100 or 30 people? Maybe ask them a question, even a rhetorical question. So how would you feel if this? Or remember that first time when you this, if you're relating and bringing in a story. That's what connects with an audience. Also sharing a piece of yourself. When you are a little bit vulnerable, like the amazing Brene Brown talks about in so many of her books, when you show that vulnerability, it shows you're human and the walls start to come down. And it shows that you are an effective leader who's strong, but also is human. And so what does this look like in our stances? Well, these ladies up here on the top, that's called low power poses. They probably look a little bit like they're more like inward, like they're a little more fearful, or that they're just like a little more insecure. But when we look at the other individuals here down these other photos, they're strong, they're tall, they're fierce. Now, Christine Lagarde in the middle there looks a little bit intense and a little bit intimidating. But do you see how her body language is so much different from the woman up there on the left? As well as then you go down to the Fortune magazine cover. That's what, like, you know, kind of true, what we see as executive presence and strong, standing tall. I really coach my executives all the time on being tall and stronger in that sense, because we perceive them as being even more competent as they go forward. But ultimately, so then we can get to some questions. I want you definitely want to come across like this. When we can shake hands again, and when we can be in person again, even when we're on Zoom calls, you can sit up straight. You can have a brightness about you. You can be looking engaging. You can look at the camera instead of down at your computer, which is a challenge sometimes because you have to look at what's on the computer, but can you look up at the camera instead? And you can still have a serious tone to what you're talking about while it's still being engaging and while you still sitting forward and communicating your body language in that way. I see some questions rolling in. Katie, I'd love to be able to answer some of them.
Absolutely. I mean, the chat's going crazy. You have just offered us so much. And I know this is days long of material. So this is a blessing to have you for 45 minutes or longer. But a couple quick questions that you answered already, some about giving us virtual meeting tips. Yep. You know, there's another that came in from Karen McCabe. She talks to 30 to 40 people virtually. And then also here's a great comment from Amy, who said she recently rewatched herself. Yes. Where she was an attendee at a meeting, and yes. She noticed like that even though she was totally engaged, she wasn't impressed with her own presence because she was looking around and squirming in her seat. Yes. Which again, now we're all learning this, you know, and so
I want to touch on that because I see that I hear that a lot. And what that is we have a listening face, we have a listening, you know, body to which way we sit. And when we're at our homes, I understand things are more relaxed now. We're not always in a blazer. We're not, half the time we're not having makeup or anything on or doing our hair. But realize a little bit of the importance of that, or even just putting that on to kind of be a signal to your brain that we're on today. We're on right now. There's even studies that show that when kids in college sit closer in the front row, which is like the last thing that they often want to do when we're in a classroom setting, or when they actually wear, instead of sweatpants, whether it's jeans or slacks, there was a difference in grades. And part of that is just to be the individual, but more so what I see is when you put on something physically or even just mentally that you're on today, your body responds and you're in work mode or curiosity mode or creative mode. And so when you are sitting in that Zoom meeting, or when you are chatting with someone virtually, don't forget about what you look like. And if you're curious of what that is, record the session and watch it back. You could also record yourself giving a presentation on your phone and then watch it back, and watch it with the sense of non-judgment, but just assessment in the data. Don't be mean to yourself and like say my hair was out of place and I can't believe that I looked like that and what was I saying? Instead, see it as just data in and out. Okay, interesting. I'm going to do this differently next time.
This is great. And then also there was a question from somebody about getting a copy of this presentation. And again, I want to remind you that this will be emailed to all of the attendees and those that weren't in attendance but registered. So you will receive this. And also I wanted to invite you all, there's 3 dots in your chat window. You should have the chat window and you can save the chat to go refer back to this questions here. And let's see. Jessica says, I think she'll change her camera. She's going to change out her laptop camera cover for a post-it that says, smile and look at the camera. It's a good reminder. I know.
Camera, not down there. Exactly.
Yeah. And again, everybody's just agreeing that all of the tips that you're providing are awesome. And Jill Bleehubby says, drum roll, please.
Awesome.
And,
awesome.
Yeah.
I did see a comment too in there about how do you engage and communicate with someone, with a team of 30 or 40 when you're sitting on a Zoom call. And that is challenging to keep them all engaged and to keep them listening and what's going on. A lot of it will come down to just how you come across. And sometimes we think that that we can just kind of sit back and just communicate like this and say, okay, we're looking down and saying, okay, well, we have some big stuff to work on today and we have to make sure that we're hitting some numbers and just seeing how everyone's doing. Raise your voice and almost put on a little bit of the presentation mode, sit up straighter and be a little more animated. You'd be surprised if you put in a little bit of that animation, your voice gets to change a little bit versus having that just monotone voice. You're able to come across a little bit more in that strong but warm presence because you're engaging, you're using more of your vocal range. Just because we're at home doesn't mean that we can just, just sit back the whole time. And sometimes we can, as we're listening, totally fine. But people still crave that engagement and someone that feels like they're interested in what they're even talking about.
That's so true. Stephanie, I want to just wrap it up for those people that need to sign off now and just say thank them all for coming and just let everybody know that we'll stay on for several minutes more to ask questions. But I wanted to just publicly thank you again before we lost anybody and say thank you so much. This was so helpful to me. I mean, I learned so much from you. So thank you.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, and then now I'm going to go back to our Q&A.
Yeah.
Chelsea had a great question. How would you recommend mustering confidence when you're unsure how to navigate the roads ahead? Any tips or tricks? Great question, Chelsea.
Okay, ask that one again because I was looking at another one, how to nicely ask to share video. We'll get back to that one. So ask that again.
How would you recommend mustering confidence when you're unsure of how to navigate the roads ahead? Any tips or tricks?
Well, I think it goes back to, I think it goes back to it definitely goes back to our mindset and how we talk to ourselves, which is a daily challenge for all of us, I myself included. I think thinking about what are the things you can control at this moment, and also looking at past times. It's amazing how resilient the human spirit is and how it actually steps up in times of crisis. So if there's a way to think about it in a time of abundance, that there will be abundance, whether it's not even right now, whether it is down the line, or instead of that scarcity mindset, we start with that. And then you go, what can I do today that will maybe increase my skills, that will be more effective for this new virtual place that will be for at the very minimum, likely, for a long time always, but at the very minimum, certainly for the next 1.5 years or 2 years, is can you even do an online free course? Can you even go and, if you feel comfortable, working for a company right now to maybe get some funds right now? There's a lot of companies that are hiring. And even sometimes we might have to put our pride aside a little bit and go, this is what I'm going to do to get by. And there's a lot of help needed out there. How can I do that? But I think we've gotten through a lot of very challenging things in the past world, in the history of the world, I should say, that there is light at the end of this. It's just, we have to be okay with this kind of feeling of uncertainty right now, which is hard, but I think it's okay. I think that we can look at it as, all right, what can I do each day? Even just getting up in the morning to be taking control and action with what I can do and how I can make myself better and help others too.
That's so true. And we talked about that yesterday too in our session, that we're lucky that we have that positive bent to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so positive, you really have to tap into all your positivity right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I mean, Julie says this was just great information that she can put into immediate use. Thank you. And that's the ticket, you know, so we're so happy. Juliet Funt suggests that you can put your notes for a Zoom presentation on stickies around your screen so you don't look down. Hey, that's great. And I love Juliet Funt. Yeah.
Yes,
You know,
yes. That's
Alan
awesome.
Funt is her dad.
Yes.
Do you remember that show? Yeah.
That's awesome. I think
yeah.
another one, Pam is asking, how do you nicely ask people to share video in an online meeting, especially when you need discussion? So you want to see those responses, which is so huge.
That is huge.
So it depends on what you're at. So Pam, if you are, you know, the manager or leader of this, there is, you do have a little bit of leverage to say, this is kind of what we're doing going forward. You don't have to necessarily say that, that yes, this is mandated, but say it in a way that is, we want this to be as realistic as it would be as we are in person. So what I'm asking is that we, for these certain meetings, these are video meetings, and maybe you can prepare them, because some people are like, I don't want to do my hair today. I want to be able to put it just like go pajamas. And so you can prepare them a little bit and say, this meeting is going to be a video meeting. This meeting, it's okay. We'll just do whatever you want. But you start creating a culture of that video platform. I work with a company that I didn't realize this first going in, but I thought that all their calls were just on phone calls. That was a link sent. And I called them, and I called in for this big meeting, and she's like, oh, can you turn your video on? And I'm like, oh my gosh. No, because I have my sweats on. Are you kidding me? So I'm like, hold on, quick, put a blazer on, like put my hair back, and I put a little bit of mascara on. And it came back, and I was like, yeah. And I didn't realize that that was their culture. And I think how they created that was that leadership has to do that to start. Leaders, you have to live by what you're preaching. So if it's that you want to have your video on and be up and be ready, make sure you do that. And then communicate that with your team and just say, this is what we'd like to do going forward. We're not only encouraging, we're asking, because we want to be able to get those nonverbals as much as possible. And again, it might not be for every meeting, it might just be for certain ones.
So true. That's a good one. And then Terry says, I knew this was going to be good. Thank you, Stephanie.
Good.
Glenn also says, thank you for the tips and talking about topics that some might skirt around. I appreciated your thoughts and suggestions. Yeah. It's just really, I think we're all hearing a lot, but this was really practical, great information. We have some more coming in. Heidi, thank you. Great reminders and tips to ensure we're always putting our best voice and video forward. That just happened to me the other day. I had a Zoom call and I didn't remember it was Zoom. I thought it was a conference call, and it was,
Yes.
I was like, oops.
Yeah, exactly.
1 minute.
And one thing too is I noticed there was someone who I was talking to recently who said that they're having some of this Zoom fatigue. They're like, God, I don't know why, if they're going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and if they are fortunate enough to have a job where they're still working and they're still very busy. They said, the challenge is I just feel exhausted, and it's weird, I shouldn't. Well, it's because you are kind of on more a little bit when you're sitting in front of this camera. The other thing is when we're talking one-on-one with someone, it's like a phone call versus when you're sitting with them one-on-one in just a normal setting. When you're sitting with them one-on-one in a conference room, there's more okay for silence and just sitting back, or maybe checking your phone, but it's almost more awkward on Zoom, unless you're really comfortable with them and they're a family member or friend or something like that. And so I think that's where some of this fatigue is coming in, is you feel like you always have to be on. And then you have the stress of just not knowing what's going on. So I think this time is so important to give ourselves a lot more grace, and also to see this as like a time of grieving too, which I think a lot of psychologists have talked about. It is. We're grieving the loss of big, massive speaking events where people get inspired and engaged and get inspired by the people next to them and around them. And then there's the uncertainty of, will it ever come back? And yeah, in time, I certainly believe it will, but I think it's okay to feel a little bit of that grief and kind of sit with that, but then go, what can I do to really bring some life into myself today and make myself a little bit happier or a little more jovial, that it will get better. But yeah, there is some loss that's really, really tough. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we're missing, amongst many other things that are much more pressing, and even just the lives to the people they're struggling right now.
It's so true. But like I said to you yesterday, you have a great presence on Zoom. I mean, everybody is saying that too. You really do. So like, we aren't at live events, but just to see you here inspires me. And then having people chat in the chat, that's inspiring too. So it's like the next best thing. Jill is saying, I also read that the brain isn't made to react to video, and all the faces talking, it is exhausting.
Yeah.
And Jan says, thank you, always great information and so helpful. Thanks for offering such empowering words, wisdom, awesome job. And Landry.
Yeah, Landry. So that is my roommate from college. Hi, Landry. Oh my God, it's so good to see you. I wish I could see your face. Oh, she's like roomie discount on a coaching.
Exactly. You're an amazing speaker. Your tips are great. I'd hire you as a coach if I could afford you.
Well, you know what? We can maybe do some virtual cocktails, girl, and that's enough.
That's fun. Where'd you go to school?
I went to the University of Minnesota, here in Minnesota. So yeah, Gopher fan, Gopher through, and a Minnesotan through and through. And so it's really great. But I'm so glad that all of you are here. And just to piggyback off that, of course, that I know there are a lot of corporations right now that are like, just what do I do with my communications? And my staff needs it, but how can I afford it? And how can we do this? You know, I'm certainly happy to discuss that and just have a chat with you about what that can look like, or even give you some tips on how to communicate more effectively, be transparent, be more open, and do that more effectively and do it more often. And then I know there are some companies that are actually hiring and they say we need this help. So certainly you can reach out. You can go to my website, which is just goetzcom.com. But you can certainly ask Katie or talk to TeamWomen.
Absolutely. And I'll love to share your information, but we'll also put that in our reminder email with the link so that people have it. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Cause that'd be great. Well, I think we've kind of wrapped it up. Thank you for staying extra time with us here and offering more insight to how we can all navigate this and communicate more effectively.
Definitely. It's been an honor. It's so great to see everyone on here, and thank you for sticking around, those of you that did, and look for my information, because I'm happy to just answer any questions. Reach out, say hi, and I wish you all the best. Don't forget that the person receiving this is also a great human on the other side. So how would you think they would want to hear this? How would you want to be responded to and talked to? And the more that we can think twice or sit back and then respond, especially to our family and our friends and the coworkers, the better off we'll all be. But you all have it in you. It's just taking time and doing it as effectively as you can.
It's so true. You know, there's one saying that I always have too. Does it need to be said? Does it need to be said right now? Does it need to be said right now by me?
Exactly. Oh, and that's so hard. Now that is something where control is like a bad thing, because control is like, no, I should be saying it and I should be able to, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. So make sure to link in with Stephanie too on LinkedIn, and look for your email later this afternoon with this webinar link and also her contact information. Thank you so much.
Have a great day, everyone.
Day.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Be well.
Go ahead and save the chat too, Stephanie, with these 3 dots if you want.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.